Hey, it's WeatherBrains episode number 675. It's the pre-show for Christmas Day, December 25th, 2018. And a little secret, we're recording the show on December 20th. Yes, but it's the annual year-ender. This is going to be a good one. For those that are watching live, it is a Thursday night special. And this will be the last show for 2018. It will be released in podcast form on Christmas Day, December 25th. And we will be back with our next show on Wednesday, January 2nd. So again, we'll be a little off the typical Monday night schedule for a couple of weeks. And again, the next Monday night show is going to be on January 7th. So that's the deal.
I hope I'm not there. I hope I'm not there for that one.
Well, you don't like ham radio, do you?
No, I love ham radio. I'm a ham radio guy, but I want to be somewhere else that night. I figured that was a great show for you, James.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have some fun with that. That'll be on the 7th. So where will you be on the 7th?
Well,
or is it a secret?
No, I hope we're playing an important football game that night.
Oh, is that the
I think it is. I hope it is. I'm counting on it being that night. It's during AMS. That's the problem. They just quit scheduling AMS during the national championship game.
Yeah, the January deal is that's the worst conceivable time for me. I went to the last AMS in 2013. I think it was the year that Marshall Shepard was he was inducted as the president that same year. It was in Austin, Texas. Troy Kimmel land down there.
Yeah, I think the last one I went to is in Phoenix. So this one's in Phoenix again. And I just canceled my hotel reservation.
Well, okay. Well, you're right. You know a guy in the hotel business. You can come up with a room if you have to.
Oh, yeah, you could pull it off. But I did all that a long time ago. So I'm ready. I'm ready to see what happens in 1 week with the playoff game, and we'll go from there.
All right. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to restart my audio hijack here. Hang on 1 second. Now let's try this.
The polar vortex.
There we go. All right. Man, I tell you, there's some classics in this sound. Got the Rickroll in here.
Do we get in trouble for that, or is that protected?
Oh yeah, you can't play Rickroll. I mean, none of this stuff you can play for more than
Well, that should be like exempted.
Really? I mean, come on, man.
It's like a meme or something.
How about the Rat Hole song?
Rat Hole.
I barely remember the Rat Hole.
43 folders of rat holes. The weekly migrating rat hole.
I barely remember that.
Rat hole.
I think the thing is, this whole show's a rat hole, so we just kind of quit playing it. Yeah, the whole thing is a rat hole.
It'll be a good show tonight, though.
If we get Rich and Greg on here, this is going to be a classic. What's the Canadian national anthem doing in here?
Can't hurt. Should have had Tiny Bumble for that Hawaiian show.
Yeah, really.
There's Aubrey.
Singing dogs.
Reminds me of Joe Rumor and WVOK and the Mighty 690.
Some of these novelty Christmas songs you can't play anymore because they're politically incorrect.
You can't play.
You cannot play "White Christmas" by Porky Pig.
Why?
It offends people that have speech impediments.
Oh Lord! You can't play.
I'll have baby blue.
You can't play "Baby It's Cold Outside" anymore now.
No, that one's been
that one's really banned. That was double banned.
think some of the best ones are these old JB songs.
I'm calling you.
I only go back to the days of Charlie Pride.
That was that. Do you know who that was?
No. That was probably.
As Slim Whitman.
You know, my parents had a Slim Whitman album.
Oh boy.
They had tons of Dean Martin albums. Those were. Where are our guests, James? This is not good. We just had successful test hangouts 30 minutes ago.
I see Aubrey, or I see her.
We see her avatar. Aubrey.
Where have all the flowers gone?
Oh.
I can't play her
song. And Aubrey was is all this accumulative, or do you get to play each one for a few seconds?
We probably just got the whole show banned by playing these snippets here. They'll kick us off the YouTubes. Oh yeah, if we can get Greg and Rich on here, this will be a great show.
Hi guys.
Aubrey, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you guys.
Hey,
no, this show is going to be. This show will be released on Christmas Day.
It's a Christmas present to the world.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah, Christmas.
Oh, look at Troy with his Santa hat. You gotta love it.
Somebody stole mine. I had one in here, but I don't have it anymore. Somebody ripped me off.
You got Christmas suspenders though, so that counts.
But I've got Kevin. I've got Kevin's hat. You know the
Winter Storm hat.
'93.
I'd be very careful of that.
I have Christmas snowflakes on.
Ooh.
You see, a friend of mine sent them to me in the mail today.
All right.
I can't remember where I got my Mount Washington hat. Hey, there's Greg.
Greg probably sent it to you.
Greg, do you have a Mount Washington hat like this?
I do, actually. It's hanging right over there. Good evening, James. I've got this hat too.
We should have all had Santa hats tonight.
Yeah, we should all have those on.
Troy here.
Hey, Troy, how's it go? Oh, he's got a hat. He's got one of those.
Good, buddy.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, let me put on my Doppler lights.
There you go. Right out to me.
Love it.
And that's a show title. Let me put on my Doppler lights.
Yeah, better than botching the show title from Monday night.
Yeah, I botched it, and Jim got mad at us.
Well, only when the Alabama Department of Law Enforcement showed up at his house.
Well, forget all these hats. This is the most important thing right here.
Oh, my goodness. You know, I didn't buy those other night because I knew Elle would have thrown me out of the house because she didn't want the boys eating stuff like that. And I was like,
these are highly illegal, but I have some contraband here. So, wow.
Man, I should have bought them anyway.
Man, wow. So Greg, what happens when the shutdown?
That's going to be a topic on the show tonight.
Oh, never mind. We'll talk about it here in a minute.
Yeah, that would have been the second time, but we'll run through it.
Oh, Lord.
Air our political grievances tonight.
All right. So,
do something, James. Do something about this. Our political gridlock. Yeah, why don't you run for something?
Run for the hills.
Yeah, I'm about to say, dig a hole is more like
exactly.
I'm already digging.
God,
2/3 of the way through my cave.
You know, there was an effort to get me to run for governor here. I told those guys I would rather stick needles in my eyes.
Yes.
I think you and Saban ought to run for president and vice president. I don't know who should be which, but
no,
James, you're like I am. If we ran for office, we'd be there for 5 hours before we told enough people off that they'd run our butts out of town anyway.
Well, that's what we need.
I'm about to say that's exactly
it. You can't do it.
No, you were up against powers and principalities that you don't even understand.
Yeah. James and I'd both be run out of Washington in the course of 3 hours, if not sooner.
Yeah, and both of our heads would explode.
Yeah, it would. Yeah,
we would even have a chance to do that. Well,
now Rich didn't have any trouble with the hangout. He should be able to get on here easily. Come on, Rich. Let's make sure.
So we've had John Hart. We got to have Rich Thompson on this show.
Now I sent it to his NOAA address though, but he's got a different Gumby address. Hold on a second.
Gumby.
Yeah.
Is his? Let me see if I've got him in mind.
You probably do. It's a little Gumby avatar. Yeah, because I can't invite him directly. You have to do it. It's like live to chase. I think. I shouldn't have said that. Should
Rich will be
no.
Here. Bleep that out, please, James.
Well, I can't. We're live. I mean, you can't. You can't. It's out in the ether world here. You can't do anything.
Well, it doesn't work to send any invites to anybody anyway. If you don't have a handshake with them, they're not going to get the invite in the first place because 80% of our guests never get my direct invites because of that.
And that's what makes this being live so great.
No, well, this is the
Rich
part of the
has a few
show.
thousand new friends.
Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah, that might be the operative word they're drawing.
Little Christmas cheer.
Oh, boy.
Everything I'm
say.
So everything I'm seeing comes up with this NOAA address. Although I
Put
know
those secret words I just said, and then you'll find them.
Well, there's no Gumby there, though.
No, no, do the words I said. Let me type them in here. So, there's John's call.
I'm here.
The class of the program just increased.
Oh, nice hat. I like it.
Yeah,
but look at Greg. Greg has one too. So
email.com.
Hey there. Hey, wait a minute. Look who's here.
Okay.
Hey, Rob. We're going.
Greg. Rich. I see Rich. There's Rich.
I'm here.
We don't need to be.
Hey, Rich.
Awesome.
Roy Kimmel here. Good.
Hey, what's going on?
But right before they shut the platform down, we need to get Gould to increase the number of panelists we can have.
How did I miss the personal Christmas decorations memo, Troy and Greg?
It was just to see how much Christmas spirit we were in, Kevin. You and I failed.
You don't have any Christmas earrings, Kevin?
Christmas earrings.
No, Christmas necklace?
I bet you do in a secret drawer there in the desk.
Those will go over well in Wichita Falls. Yeah.
Show title.
Hey, do I need to get my other microphone, or where am I on the microphone?
You're good.
You sound good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think your mic's good.
Tapping,
hey, Rich, can you hear us okay?
Tapping.
Yeah, I hear you guys fine.
Yeah, you sound good too, Rich. Thanks.
I'm tapping this inline microphone on my headset.
That's
Is that it? Okay.
Well, let's start. We have no. We're on, this show will air TV Monday nights, so we have no time requirements here. So let's get this thing started. All right, recorder 1 and recorder 2. I think we're ready. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's Christmas Day. This is the WeatherBrains Year-Ender Christmas Edition. This is for December 25th, 2018. Merry Christmas to one and all. It's the most marvelous time of the year, and we are on duty. And look, there's no secrets here. We're actually doing the show on December 20th, Dr. John. We're honest engines here. So, Dr. John, how are you, sir? Always. Always best to tell the truth.
That's so true.
Since when?
We are wet.
Drinking commodity.
Sorry.
How wet are you?
Meteorologist here.
Well, we started out with a hard frost this morning, 27 degrees, and now it's 45.9 and a steady rain.
Oh,
You're
man.
45. Wow.
Oh, just in the last 2 hours, it's jumped 10 degrees.
Wow.
So we're getting
Aubrey,
an east flow now.
Aubrey, what you got down there in Harrisonburg?
I got 37 and heavy rain.
Ooh, that's miserable. Oh, that just sounds miserable.
Yep. I'm hoping to be about 42 by morning.
Right. And again, for those that are listening on the podcast side, most people do. We're recording this on December 20th. You're hearing it later, but that's what's happening as we do the show here. So let's see. Kevin Selly, welcome to the show. We missed you on the last episode. It's always good to have you back here. You doing the TV tonight?
No, I'm off today. So I don't care about my local weather, actually.
There's a show title.
Yeah.
Don't care about my local weather.
It took me, I mean, obviously I always care, but it really took me years and years and years to sort of detach on the weekends. You do a forecast on Friday and you just go, oh, I got to make sure and everything. And I think I finally reached a good balance on it.
Okay. Well, I am not there. I cannot get my mind off of it. I never get my mind off of it. But Kevin, you're just a smarter guy than we are. And
I'm just unplugging on everything. I'm got social media and the weather. There's going to be nothing
next, Kevin.
Nothing left for me.
And he's living better and longer for it.
So Kevin is in Wichita Falls. A little farther to the south is Troy Kimmel, decked out in his fine Santa hat, looking good tonight. How you doing, Troy?
Doing good, James. Doing good. Clear skies, lots of sunshine in Austin today. And at this co-op station, the MMTS is showing 51.6 degrees, and it's a pleasant evening in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. Good deal. And, while most people are listening to this, I'm planning on being in Colorado beginning on the 26th, and it looks like we might be arriving, Bill Murray, in a blizzard. So
that's the best. That's the best. So scout me out some hotel locations while you're there, James, because I got a client who wants to build a ski hotel. So spot me a spot.
Okay, I'll do that. And I have never. I am a total noob. Everybody out there, these professional snow ski people. I'll be the one, jabroni out there that holds everything up. But anyway,
you're going to ski.
Well, how are you getting from the airport to the hotel? We need to make sure you're safe. We need to keep you in one piece.
Some big van's picking us up, and it's like I think 3 hours or something like that. From
this is the first time you've skied.
Well, I tried to snowboard once in West Virginia, which was a total disaster. But,
we're going to need
Bill. Okay, now, Bill, I have a question for Bill. Do we have any type of corporate, WeatherBrains account that has James covered in insurance?
Yeah, we have exactly. We have Keyman insurance.
Okay, he's going to break something he needs. He's going to break something he needs.
So that'll be fun. But Bill Murray, let's bring in our guy. I'm excited. I love the year ender. It's the greatest show we do. So bring in the guest and let's go.
This show really. Right here every year, James, is the most important show of the entire year because Greg Carbon takes time out of his schedule to reveal the 10th top event of the year. So we are really honored tonight to have the branch chief from the Weather Prediction Center, Greg Carbon, on the show. Greg, thank you for joining us.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Merry Christmas. And
I should interrupt. It's worth it for all the audio listeners to tune for just a moment to the YouTube to see Greg, and I'll say all that much.
I was going to say there's so many things going on in his image there.
Yeah.
So remember that Highlights magazine we had when we were kids? Like so many things you could find in the picture. I challenge all the WeatherBrains listeners that are like, is there anybody listening live tonight? There probably is, James.
Yeah.
To point out all of the things in Greg's imagery there.
You got the Doppler lights.
Yeah, that's true. The spilled paint there. Yeah, there you go.
Inbound and outbound velocities going.
There we go.
Oh my goodness! But thank you for joining us, Greg. This is really
I'm
really
looking forward to. Yeah,
thanks for keeping the tradition going. And we're really excited tonight to have Rich Thompson, who's the lead forecaster at the Storm Prediction Center. Rich, how are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing?
Proudly wearing that Houston Astros hat, huh?
Well, I can milk it for what it's worth. That's the most recent title I got.
So how are they looking for next year, Rich? That's the important question.
Should be pretty good. Should be good. We'll see. Give them a little time over the off season.
All right, you going to heckle Greg a lot tonight during the?
I'm going to try.
Please.
We're
I'm so excited to hear Rich is going to be on. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing fine. Do you keep in DC in order, or should I even ask?
I'll have to take the lights off when we go there.
Yeah, we have a furlough coming. You can see what a good job he's doing. Don't get him started. So Greg, what we're so sick of this politics stuff. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But what, tell us what really happens, and Rich, jump in too.
All right.
What really happens during these shutdown
right,
things? Is it like a big party or what?
All right. I got to take the
he's getting
the hat and the lights
now.
go away.
Wow. The lights went away. This is not good.
Well, no, I mean, it's not good, and that's why the situation is stressful for a lot of people. Hopefully there's a breakthrough here in the next 24 hours, or else we're going to be going into a situation we've seen before, but not at this time of year. This is kind of discouraging to have this occur just before Christmas. The Weather Service forecasters and staff, many are what are called accepted employees. So they have to report to work if they're on the schedule. For folks that have taken leave for the holidays, believe it or not, that leave is canceled under a shutdown, and they are put on furlough. But at the same time, when they come off of that leave to go back on schedule, they have to go back into accepted status. So there are a lot of things that need to happen. It's incredibly inefficient. The government is not meant to be turned on and off like a light switch, essentially, especially when you're dealing with the protection of life and property. Yeah. So really rather stressful period of time. The last time we saw a lengthy shutdown was at October 2013. I just remember feeling really discouraged during the whole event. And we'll continue to work through it. And, there are a lot of very dedicated people out there that will come into work, and with no guarantee that they're going to see a regular paycheck until the government is back up and running again. But let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you guys back paid for the time that you work, or is it just time that you don't see paid for?
So accepted employees are expected, yes, they are on the clock, and once the government is back up, they are paid for that time. And all past events, even furloughed employees, have been paid for that time. So you can see how incredibly wasteful it is. I mean, I'm speaking as a taxpayer now, not an employee. But as a taxpayer, this is not the way you want your government to be run, because it is just a horrendous waste of money.
Amen.
Just makes me sick at my stomach, I tell you. The whole thing just makes me sick at my stomach. Now, are there any non-accepted employees in the Weather Service?
Yeah, actually, there are. There are a number of relatively high-level folks that are not accepted because their role is not directly involved with the protection of life and property, and so they will go on furlough.
My goodness. Any comments, Rich?
I'll show up to work at 8 a.m. That's it's the third or fourth time it's happened in my career where we've had a shutdown, if it comes to that, and I just will work through it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, my next scheduled shift is Sunday, and I'll be going into work the surface analysis desk on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Well, at least there's no National Weather Association meeting this week, Dr. John.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some far-reaching implications when the government shuts down. They go beyond what just government employees and the services they provide. For example, when they shut down the data servers, I can't access the data that I use to do my work. So I have to tell my clients, I'm sorry, I can't complete the assignment you gave me because I can't access the data because the government shut down. These implications go a lot further than just the perimeter of Washington, and it drives me crazy. The last time it happened, I wrote a letter to my senator, and I said, you may not be aware of the fact that there are those of us out here that rely on these data archives to do our job. Yeah. When you shut them down, I can't work.
And I'm sure you got a very ridiculous letter back.
really nice.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we put a real pall over tonight, and tonight's celebration shows.
Yeah, now they're all depressed here.
Merry
Let's go
Christmas.
and finish.
Go ahead and end.
Ho,
James,
ho,
right
ho,
now.
Moving on.
Well, on a lighter note, at Greg's talk at NWA, it's recently become a drinking game. So I'll kind of let because they usually have some adult beverages sometime somewhere around the evening event that they schedule Greg for.
Yeah.
So, what are some of our former keywords that we've hit on,
Yeah.
Greg? Do you remember?
I think when we first started this, it might have been in Oklahoma City, and when we first started the drinking game, I mean, we've been doing it. I've been doing this now 14 years, but I think in Oklahoma City we use the word extreme, which
I'll drink to that.
There were quite a few tipsy people that left that room after the talk.
So Troy Kimmel, what's your guess? What's the keyword going to be for 2018? What do you think it could be? Wildfires, maybe?
I don't know.
Flood.
Flooding, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what we picked when we were at NWA.
That event on Monday night was a little out of control. So at the icebreaker.
That was a tough crowd.
Yeah, it was a loud crowd. That was for sure.
It was a loud crowd.
Yeah. Oh, good. So anyway, I guess, Dr. John, what would you want to nominate an event? See if Greg picked up on it. I know you got a top event for 2018. What would you say? We'll see.
Wow.
We'll see if we can ring the bell tonight.
Yeah.
You want to pass to Troy?
I'm gonna have to pass.
Troy, what would you say? What's an event for 2018 you would say is on Dr. Carbon's list?
I'm so amazed by Greg Carbon's knowledge and his presentations and everything that he does that I'm going to bow to his expertise tonight. Let him.
The next senator from Texas.
In other words, I have no idea.
James, I know you got an event. James, you got to have an event. What would you say, James?
Yeah, just one guess.
Am I trying to guess the number one event of the year?
No, any event.
No, because they're not ranked. They're not ranked.
Michael.
Yeah.
I mean,
would that make the list, Greg?
Well, so the concept is that these are my memories. Your mileage may vary year. I don't rank them, and they don't represent in any way any official ranking or listing by my agency, and that usually I only get through about 7 to 9 of them at the NWA, which takes place in September. So we hold out number 10 for this WeatherBrains, right? And James just gave it all away.
There you go. Well, we can set the show down now. That's our second shutdown of the night.
That's it. We're done.
That's fine. I mean, we're not going to go into a lot of detail because there's 10. So we got 10 events. We'll go in chronological order. And when I just earlier today, I called up the presentation from NWA and I was going through them and I'm like, there's so many other things that happen in addition to the listing of 10.
We'll talk about them all.
Yeah. Yep. So whenever you're ready, we'll
hit it, Greg.
All right.
And everybody be ready to jump in. Give your.
All right, we're ready to go.
And after this is over, I want Rich to share some Greg Carbon stories for us.
Oh yeah. Don't forget to heckle, Rich.
Fireside chat.
I'll do that.
Is it too late to cancel?
You always just claim internet problems, Greg, and that's hard for you to do because you look like you have about 200 gigs of internet there running.
All right. So do you want me to share the screen and go through this, or?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
You just have to describe everything that's on there to the audio audience.
Let's see. So if I go to present mode, let's go up here.
Rich, this is where you share some Greg stories while he's doing this.
He's probably going to figure it out a little quicker than that. I got to think of the best ones.
There you go. That's what we want.
So does the director have to share the screen, or how does this work here? So
you got a little screen share button on the left side. It's the second icon down when you hover over the left side of your screen.
There it is. Yep. All right.
Pick anything there you want. Any secret government memos, you can show those. Whatever.
How about this one?
All
right.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
All right. So let's get underway. It's just a few shots I took through the year, just here and there.
Wow.
I think that one in the upper left is the Gulf of Maine on my way to Nova Scotia, and then the White Mountains, and then cherry tree in the snow on my street here in Maryland. The Potomac River in flood. That was pretty impressive.
Wow.
I think that sunset shot may not be mine. So let's move on.
Was that in your Twitter feed, James? That sunset shot there?
Yeah.
So let's quickly go back through 2017, and the reason I want to do this, I did this with NWA, is because they didn't get to see last year what number 10 was. Of course, I revealed number 10 on this show last year, and that was the 2017 December wildfires in California. So that was the 10th event that we revealed on WeatherBrains last year in December 2017. But let's start with 2018. So this is memory number one. This incredible East Coast cyclone, and those who have been following along over the years always get a nor'easter in the talk, it seems, because they are just amazing and fascinating, and probably a big reason that I got into meteorology growing up in New England and watching these. So this was right after the New Year, coming up the East Coast, and you can see the snow swath there in the wake of that low.
That's remarkable.
From northern Florida up through the Carolinas. So we'll follow the low here on the WPC surface analyses going up as it deepens rapidly east of Cape Hatteras, off of Delmarva, and then into the Gulf of Maine. So a 41 millibar drop in pressure in about 24 hours made for quite a remarkable storm. And with respect to records, we'll talk about that in just a minute, where we can put this event in some historical context. But here's just a look at the 6-hour snowfall associated with the cyclone as it moved up into the Bay of Fundy there and up into northern New England. So we put together a infographic here showing the not unprecedented nature, but rather rare nature of mid-latitude cyclones deepening at this explosive rate, pressures dropping about 50 millibars in 24 hours. And the last one, the best one for historical comparison, occurred on the same day in 1989. It was a little farther east of Boston at its deepest pressure, and dropped 60 millibars in 24 hours. So just 1 millibar more than the one we saw at the beginning of the year on January 4th, 2018.
Hey, Greg, do you remember what kind of wave heights were generated by that cyclone?
Well, there you go. There's the next one.
You guys have your act working together here.
So what I found really remarkable about this too is that it set a new record storm surge in Boston Harbor. The last being set back with the blizzard in 1978. You can see that on the chart here, but it hit a new one. And this chart is actually these percentile ranks or rarity of these storm surge events is basically the slope is adjusted for sea level rise. And so, an event in 1978 should be quite rare, and we saw another one occur here in 2018. And what's really striking, it was about a week later, there was another East Coast storm that pushed the tide up to record levels in Boston Harbor once again. So,
wow.
So
this is stupid on my part, but my favorite thing in any strong nor'easter is the visible satellite images with the cold air screaming off of the mid-Atlantic region. And you get that band of clearing over the ocean, and then you just get that band of cloud cover. I think that's just the coolest thing in the world.
And that photograph you showed is just spectacular, the visible satellite image.
Yeah, one of the new GOES images. It was one of the first GOES images from the GOES 17 or 16 with the new satellite up there with the cyclone. So that's number one. On to number two. This was the Montecito debris flow in Southern California. Primarily, a result of two factors, one being the wildfires that occurred there late in 2017, and then the onset of the rainy season, unfortunately bringing high rainfall rates to these burn scar areas. So USGS actually has an analysis of the probability of landslides on these burn scars. And on this map, I show all the burn scars across the western United States on the left, and then a close-up of Montecito and the Thomas Fire area burn scar here. And so it doesn't take a lot of rain to cause a heck of a lot of trouble in these areas. And they got quite a bit of rain with this system that came on shore January 9th. You can see the low there on the visible satellite imagery and the strong moisture flux within the cyclone, kind of directed right at that area. And here's just a loop of the radar imagery showing the narrow cold frontal rain band moving across. The burn scars are also shown on this image, and just the wrong place at the wrong time. And let's see if I can go forward here. And the result, this shows some of the rainfall rates. So 1/8 of an inch of rain in 15 minutes is not good just about anywhere. But you put that in an area with no vegetation, and you've got a real problem. 1/2 inch in 15 minutes. So these rates are well above the rates that were required for those relatively high probabilities to cause debris flow. And Montecito sits below the higher terrain here, just inland from the Pacific. And you can see this before image and then this after image with the direction of mud flow toward the bottom of the screen here. Just really hard to even comprehend the power of this type of debris flow.
Is there a difference in the definition between mud flow and debris flow?
I'm not sure if there's a fundamental difference. I mean, debris, I would think of a debris flow as having a little bit more
stuff.
Substantial nature to it, as you can see here.
That's just the most shocking picture.
Yeah. So massively, 15-foot high, a wall of mud, rocks, trees, whatever was in its way, picked up. 21 fatalities, unfortunately, 150 injuries, and quite a bit of damage, almost $500 million in insured losses with this event.
Any idea how fast it was moving at its peak or average?
I don't. I think if I guessed, I'd probably be getting confused with some of the speeds we heard fires were moving like this year. But pretty fast. I mean, there were evacuation orders in place ahead of this. The vulnerability was known. The timing on the event probably wasn't ideal when it occurred. I believe it was still dark or just after dark. But nonetheless, an absolutely devastating event. So now we get into Rich Thompson's territory.
Severe weather?
Or lack of it.
Yeah.
What are you doing out there, Rich?
Research.
I'm doing my job, Greg.
So it was a quiet, and Rich, I remember Rich asking me, I think during the 2017 when we were in Orange County for NWA and we gave the talk, I don't think I had any severe weather events in the year in review. And Rich asked me afterward, I think, about that. It's the first time that I'd ever done the year in review without any severe weather in it. So we've had a couple of quiet years, and this really was just a quick analysis at some of the large scale factors. And Rich, feel free to chime in here at the conclusion about any insight you have. But here's the chart showing this, through the summer months, the 2018 total running at about 600, which is the theoretical minimum of tornado numbers through the midpoint of the year, just a little bit into the summer. And then, it wasn't that long ago we were up on the red line, as James and others there know well, in 2011.
We like this better.
So there's 2011 compared to 2018.
And we're like 11:55 now, Greg, Rich?
Somewhere in there. Yeah, we're still down near the min. We might be just a little above it, but we're pretty close.
So we're down here in the 25th rank, 25th percentile. But I wanted to focus on the peak. This, if you look at this kind of smooth summary of annual tornado numbers, the steepest slope in the line, meaning the most numbers over the shortest period of time, occur, as we all know, between April and June. And so I just took a quick look at some reanalysis data comparing this year to other years. This was the mean 500 millibar flow. And I know Rich will get depressed just looking at this.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be allowed.
I'm sorry, Rich. And then 2011, just for comparison's sake, the same period of time, April through June 2011, on the lower right here, showing a dramatically different pattern that it takes for severe weather compared to what we saw this past season. Kate, this is pretty noisy, but interesting nonetheless. Had a lot of flow in 2011, so what you saw was essentially the Cape axis in 2011 was pushed to the east of where it normally would be, and the anomalies were quite high at a large and unstable warm sector across much of the lower Mississippi Valley, Tennessee Valley, as we know, during 2011.
Can I just say from Wichita Falls that I'm okay with all these changes?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't mind the Easter shift.
I know, I understand. I might have to turn in my severe weather geek card by saying that, but I'm okay.
Yeah, we're with you, Kevin.
Yeah, it's sort of the way I'm getting with East Coast snowstorms, but we can go there. But the big signal I found in the reanalysis data here, and these are really broad composites describing the synoptic flow regime over the peak of tornado, what would be the normal peak in tornado activity. There wasn't any flow across the middle of the country from April through June, as you can see in the big picture here. Compare that to the flow regime that was in place at 500 millibars in 2011 in the upper right. And then the difference here between the two. So just the lack of large-scale flow, ridging, not a lot of opportunities for strong ascent. There were exceptions, however. There's some very active days in parts of Wyoming. And so, Rich, you're looking at this closer than I am. What's going on?
Well, I think the simplest explanation for this is the slower your tornado season, generally the closer you're going to get to the high terrain, because you mentioned it specifically, the weaker flow, the lee troughs farther west, weaker, the moisture can end up sneaking up closer to the foothills than you would normally see. If you have strong westerlies, you got no chance in most of Wyoming and Colorado. It'll be out to the east of there. So this year is a perfect setup. It's weaker, a little bit more southwest flow, farther northwest, and weak ridging over the plains. There were just no strong synoptic waves that I remember south of Wyoming.
And Dr. John, Greg, somebody presented from SPC with climatology, from the databases showing, some shift in the stronger flow as we go through, changing climate. Does anybody remember that presentation? Who did it and kind of what?
No, but there was a paper that just came out recently talking about a poleward shift in the jet stream.
Has a paper out showing the change in the centroid of tornado activity. Supposedly a pretty good shift to the east and north over in recent years. But this was just very quiet. Nature has a way of making up for these things. It's Rich. That's great insight too, Rich, about the weak flow regime favoring the potential for high.
Well, I mean, you can go way back to a really slow severe weather season in the late 80s, and it was very busy around Denver. They remember it quite a bit differently there, but it was the same sort of idea. This is a little bit probably more supercell related this year than the stuff around Denver in 88, but still the same idea that the either more meridional the flow or the weaker the flow, the closer you'll get it back to the high terrain.
So if there is a climate connection, and I hate to say this because I don't want to put the Chamber of Commerce in Oklahoma out of business, but book for Denver, don't chase Oklahoma.
Well, save some gas money, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Rich, Greg, 10 fatalities right now. That's a really good number.
That's very low and unusually low. Again, I haven't chance to look historically where that ranks, but like I said before, my laptop is sitting on my Tom Grisula's Significant Tornadoes book. So
Yeah.
You don't have the draft of the new update yet?
I was going to ask that.
I think we were near the all-time low for
I hate to say that because I always say it, and then on December 27th, there's a 30 fatality deal.
So
I don't believe a single tornado's killed more than 1 or 2 people.
That's exactly right. The one in Baltimore killed 2, Rich.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That was a rare November tornado.
And I know we're way down. We might be at our all-time min for tornado watches coming out of SBC.
Wow.
Kevin's either taking selfies or he's capturing screen images there.
So more
multitasking.
hurricane-related fatalities this year than tornado-related.
Oh, far more, and flooding too. Yep.
That's the big
There's
story.
your word, Aubrey. There, you get to take a drink.
Yep.
There you go.
You each get your own personal drinking game word tonight.
Flooding.
Yeah, don't use that. We're in a flood watch right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Once after those debris flows, Dr. John.
Yeah.
This is getting out of hand. No.
It's always out of hand, Greg.
All right.
Never here.
Memory number 4. This was the late spring snowstorm across the upper Midwest, but also a flash flood and severe weather event across the lower Mississippi Valley. And this is just the infrared imagery loop here, showing the cyclone, pretty much classic Midwest track. And
so that's the JSU tornado in Alabama, isn't it, James?
No,
That was March
this was
19th.
this is
Rich would know. Yeah.
well, this is a flood event in southern Alabama. 6 inches of rain, 6 to 7 inches in southwest Alabama, with the squall line. We presented this. Patrick Marsh and I presented this case in the broadcast workshop at NWA, where we asked whether it was a flood event or a severe weather event. It actually was both. It was also a major snowstorm. So here's the 72-hour accumulation of snow across the upper Midwest. Some pretty impressive numbers there, 18 to 24 inches of snow.
Yeah.
Around
This is a record for Green Bay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
and this is in mid-April too. You know, this is not in January.
It's not what you would expect in mid-April across this area. At WPC, we're working on a concept to try to quantify these events in a forecast sense, using categorical descriptions, but also based on population, snow load, and this event would have been categorized as extreme, especially across Wisconsin there.
We don't remember them unless you use the Weather Channel name, Greg. So please use it.
Oh, brother.
Snowstorm Batman, I guess. I don't know what this was.
Yeah.
Doughboy. There goes
the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yeah. So this is taken near Green Bay.
The Doughboy nearly disappeared there.
Yeah.
The frozen tundra extends into April.
Yeah.
I think we had a trace of snow into early April this year.
And then Newfoundland had y'all all beat or Nova Scotia because they had snow in June.
Jeez.
There's the close up of that area that got the most of it.
I think that's very telling, though, Greg, when you showed your graphic about the severity index, because it's different for different people.
Oh yeah, it takes a little bit more in that part of the world,
Right.
To constitute a major or extreme event. So many records fell across the upper Midwest, the snowiest April in season up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And the second greatest snowstorm for Green Bay at about 2 feet. You have to go all the way back to the late 1800s to find the first one, I think.
Well, unless you want to get James's ire up, you'll have to share your algorithm for coming up with a rating because he'll make his head explode if it's a subjective rating.
Well, this is a pretty good example of why the early severe season was so bad. Where's the primary threat area, west and south of season record snowfall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't say a whole lot about the air masses that are involved.
Not a good sign.
Good point.
So, a move from the tornado belt to the rain belt. And Ellicott City, I was here for the first event. In fact, I was just arrived the summer of 2016 when Ellicott City was hit with a summertime thunderstorm in July that ended up causing significant damage in the city. Now, this city is particularly vulnerable. There was a great segment on NPR NewsHour about a week or so ago about some of the changes they're hoping to make with respect to infrastructure in the city after the second major flash flood event in under 2 years. So this was the second. I was trying to cook on the grill at a friend's house not too far from here, and the downpours were just incredible. And unfortunately, the training over Ellicott City occurred over a few hours, and you can see how the city is situated in kind of a bowl here on the Patapsco River. And the synoptic scale event, or mesoscale event, basically had a situation where weak low pressure was located over the northern Chesapeake Bay, and you were in a very moist air mass and relatively weak flow, or flow supporting some back building storms. And so all of that water comes rushing down the Patapsco River and right down Main Street. And you can see the rise here that occurred over a very short period of time, resulting in catastrophic flooding. And there's the radar estimated rainfall close to 10 inches, an inch and a half in 15 minutes, 2 inches in 30 minutes, 3 inches in an hour, over 6 inches in 3 hours.
Wow.
So you put that
placed in that bowl too.
Yeah, put that in the wrong place and at the wrong time. And it was really just surreal because these images looked exactly like the ones that we had seen less than 2
years earlier.
So they had just recovered in some of these buildings, and they got hit again.
So are they rebuilding? Are they rebuilding in that area?
You know, I drove through that the beginning of I was up there on Tuesday evening, and I drove through the downtown area, and you can still see some of these places that are washed out, but they have come back. It's a beautiful old town, and it was, you know, the lights were up for the holidays, and you know, I'm planning on getting back up there because it was the first time I'd gone through, and it looked like a really nice place to visit. So really sad and unfortunate that they get hit again. And this time,
the new Johnstown there.
Yeah, this time, unfortunately, a fatality as well. If you have a chance to go to NPR NewsHour and try to find this segment on Ellicott City, it's actually quite dramatic. They have video from within this woman's store as the floodwaters moved in. And I mean, it's edge of the seat. You're going to be really shocked when you see some of that unfolding. So this event was another unfortunate weather memory for 2018.
Did they say anything about how long they expected some of these changes? How long before they kind of took place?
Well, so you mean the upcoming?
Some of the flood mitigation to improve?
So they do. I think one of the bigger challenges they face is the cost. And so, you know, there's a debate going on about, can we afford to do this? And basically there's not much choice. You either do it or you move the town.
Can they afford not to do it? Right,
exactly. And so there are these discussions going on about spending millions of dollars for flood mitigation at Ellicott City. And when you see the old town there, you have to almost say, you know, it's like we look at other iconic cities in this country, you know, New Orleans and other places where we're obviously not going to be moving out of them, but we better be thinking about ways to improve drainage and account for these devastating flood events with rainfall rates of, you know, 6 inches in 3 hours. So.
And Greg, to some extent, I think the horse is out of the barn, though, because there's been unrestricted growth, or at least unregulated growth, on the higher terrain that surrounds the old town. So the amount of permeability is drastically reduced. You're forcing all the overland flow down Main Street, and it becomes a tributary to the Patapsco.
Yeah. So they have ideas on how they might be able to direct that flow, but it won't be cheap. So, and yeah, I will say that, you know, I mean, that there is a lot of growth, no doubt. This is a densely populated area of the country. The county I live in, Montgomery County, I have to give a lot of credit to folks that were here maybe 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when they began to think about how that growth was going to impact the area. There's a lot of designated open space here. There's a large area to the north of where I live that is designated agricultural preserve. And those are great ideas that people thought about, you know, 30, 40 years ago. It gives you some idea of what we need to be doing now for climate change and other things. You know, these good ideas that were, you know, hatched over 30, 40 years ago, pay dividends a generation later. So I compressed 6, 7, 8, and 9 quite a bit here, but that was because the NWA meeting, you know, I knew I was pressed for time. And so these events, number 6 was the greatest number of daily severe weather reports. That was June 28th, 2018. Did you work that, Rich?
I did not.
Yeah, that was 500, 600, 700 wind reports. Bunch of tornadoes in the northern plains. Not a tornado outbreak, but a significant severe weather day. Maybe the most significant severe weather day of 2018. Number 7 was, I struggled with this one, but the volcano made a lot of headlines in Hawaii in 2018. And I thought the interesting aspect of this is that we have the phrase, we now have the meteorological phrase VOG, which is vapor fog, which can be very dangerous, sulfur dioxide fog from a volcano. So air trajectory and parcel trajectory forecasting is incredibly important for that area. Number 8 was the record heat and fires in the West. Some of the hottest the hottest summers on record out there, from Arizona to Southern California, Southern Nevada. And then we're living it again tonight in the East. And these decisions were made in July and August when we were already reaching, this was before Florence, highly anomalous rainfall in the East. Records now being set across dozens of eastern U.S. cities. Reached 100 inches of rain in Wilmington, more today. So it'll be the wettest year on record for many locations. So we left at number 10, and I just came up with number 10 earlier today. I struggled with this because we had, you know, the massively devastating Carr Fire and Paradise fires in Paradise, California, again, and real problems there. But decided on, let me go forward here. Hold on. Decided on Michael.
Yes.
Yep.
For number 10. There you go.
That doesn't even look real.
I know. And, you know, after these events like Katrina and Irene, it's hard to put these things in context when you look at the amount of damage that they inflict. So I did a number of, you know, NOAA goes out and does these overflight images, and they have some amazing websites where you can compare the before and after imagery. And this is Mexico Beach on the Florida coast, Florida Panhandle coast, just southeast of Pensacola, right? Is it
Panama City? Yeah.
Panama City, sorry. Yeah, so remarkable devastation.
Why is it so blackened right there along the front?
Yeah, that's
building. That's really interesting. Does anybody have any ideas why that would be?
Standing water, maybe?
I was looking at that.
It could be water. Yeah, it could be just puddles there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could see the footprints of the homes almost like a tornado went through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much follow-up reporting from there. Have I just
It's
missed
been
it?
really quiet, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Too quiet.
Yes, let me just say they've been ignored by the national media. The way it works these days, if there's some big story like that, they'll come in there for 1 or 2 days and do a good job, and they're gone, and they're back on the politics thing. And so I was very glad to see our friend Ginger Z in Panama City on the air a couple of days ago. Reporting from there, telling the story. There are great needs. There are people that are suffering. And this is not an exaggeration. To this day, you've got people living in tents, and nobody's telling the story.
With all kind of wind going through there tonight, and
the rain and
tornadoes.
It's just the world we live in. The national media. It's Trump politics all the time.
Yeah.
Love him, hate him, whatever. It's all this, partisan politics stuff. Nobody wants to cover stories like this because it's not directly tied to politics. So it's really sad, but it was good to see Ginger come back. But I would just say for those that are watching or listening, there are some people that are still in great need. If you want to dig in there, I'll try and dig up some good Facebook links. Or not Facebook, but web links. Kevin's going to get mad if I did that. Web links of ministries where you can help those people down there because there is great need.
Yeah. And it should come as no surprise that there's great need when you look at some of the statistics on this. The third most intense Atlantic hurricane to make landfall. And since the 35 Labor Day hurricane and Camille in 69. So you're talking about a pretty much a once in a generation hurricane event for this area. And I think what was most striking about this was watching the lead up to landfall. So often you see weakening, right?
Right,
right. And you don't. It's just otherworldly to see a hurricane intensifying like Michael did right up through landfall. And you just knew. I mean, you had that feeling, that pit in your stomach. Like I can feel it today for the April 27th, 2011 event. You just knew that there was a lot of damage and destruction going on in real time that you weren't going to hear about right away.
Hey, Greg, let me say too, a lot of the damage, it's inland that nobody talks about. These are communities not on the coast, not Mexico Beach, not Panama City, but you get up toward Marietta, Florida, and even into southwestern Georgia.
Bainbridge, Georgia.
Right. The damage, to this day, it's stunning, and they still have great needs. So this is something that did not affect just the coast, but communities that were 50, 60 miles inland as well.
Right.
Well, and have you guys seen the new Ginger put out on her Instagram today, her new series called Rescue Heroes? That's going to premiere January 5th on Saturday mornings. She said she's usually telling the story of the victim. In her new show, she's going to tell the story from the hero's perspective.
Nice.
So good for Ginger.
Good for Ginger. Yep. So those are the 10. So I usually have a summary slide, but I just summarized the events that I have.
What's interesting? I just went, you showed the satellite picture. I assume that was Google Maps, but I just went to Google Maps and punched it up to see if I could see if it had been updated. And if you go there now, it's the pre-hurricane shot with all the buildings.
I haven't updated it yet.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, the new one would be kind of depressing. So somehow the Alabama record hailstone didn't make it on your list, Greg. 5 inches.
Sorry, Bill.
I want that on there. Can we add a number 11? Don't you think we should get something for our record hailstone?
Put that in the appendix.
Yeah, we need an addendum down here.
Now, I will say, and the other thing about that March 19th deal, we had an EF3 tornado come through a college town, Jacksonville. This is not Jacksonville, Florida. This is Jacksonville, Alabama. And I will say that the school is on spring break, but still, that could have killed some people.
That was terrible.
We had no loss of life. Rich, were you working the March 19th event?
Yeah, I was working that evening.
The watch was excellent. The warnings were excellent, and the whole system worked very well. And there was no loss of life, and I think we can celebrate that.
Yeah. And I thought you'd have the New England long track tornado in New Hampshire, Greg. How did you miss that?
I'm
36 miles. I mean, it's EF1 or 0 or whatever.
I warned you, Bill. Your mileage may vary.
We got to heckle you, though. I mean, it's part of our job, you know. And how close were we getting the Port Orchard EF2 in there?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah,
that?
you
That's
know.
quite incredible.
And we had the November event here in Northern Maryland. In fact, a colleague, staffer at WPC, the tornado went right over his house.
Wow.
Massive damage of trees in that area. And then shortly thereafter, the Baltimore warehouse wall collapsed. So,
yeah.
You know, we could go on and on, but I try to keep it to 10.
Yeah. Well, and WeatherBrains were long for me, even though we promised Troy we'd get him out tonight by 10. So, what about the 52.02 inches in Hawaii, Greg? That was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, they had a number of close calls with hurricane or tropical cyclone events in the Pacific this season. Lane, right, was one of them.
Right. And,
we may have to make it a WeatherBrain 15 for.
Oh my goodness!
We could add 6 easily. No question about it. 99 days at Lubbock without rain, all-time record.
Wow.
Well, you know, Greg, Troy here, that the big flash flood event out near Junction back earlier in the fall, Junction, Texas, and of course that then we proceeded or followed by the Llano flood.
Right.
And, and we had a number of deaths out at Junction.
Yeah.
And I guess the amazing thing with that, I'll get my say in about this, was the city of Austin, that is the capital of Texas, was under a boil water notice for about a week. Now that has, to be honest with you, it really doesn't have that much to do with the city because the city is incompetent. As far as their water, it's the fault of the city. They didn't plan very well. If you've ever been here, they sort of plan the water like they plan the traffic. Yeah. But that was their fault. Really, the state capital under a boil water notice for a week. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. These events seem to be occurring more frequently. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed at SPC.
Well, what about the severe weather part? You'd be bored to tears.
Well, this is kind of good, though. 12, 13, 14 this year. These low numbers are really, I mean, for us, we like them. I mean.
And you realize, though, everyone, we're hexing this, and Rich is going to hate it
every time.
You know, when this
exactly right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as
hey, Rich, for all these people that say those guys at SPC during years like this, they sit around and twiddle their thumbs.
They're playing Fortnite up there.
Yeah. You know, they're out there, vaping or something. Explain some of the research that goes on. So
good Lord.
I'm going to follow that.
You got to get out.
Water vapor.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, in Oklahoma, we'll take all that we can get. But the one thing I can say is that when we have slow, especially when the winter is slow, that's the most productive time for us. We started a project looking at convective modes. I mean, we're basically evaluating radar data, high resolution, single site data for every tornado event for we're trying to do the entire 88D era going back to 1995. We're not quite there yet, but this ends up being just monstrous spreadsheets, 45 to 55,000 rows of data, a few hundred columns. And a lot of this is manually entered over the course of like 7 or 8 years. So, if anyone wants to say that we're not working, I'll send them the spreadsheet. I mean, we're free to share it and say, if you think this didn't take any time to do, please come help us. I'd love to finish it in a week.
Make sure you back up that data, Rich.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got about 400 copies of it. That's part of the problem. We'll take the network down. But we work on, there's some, I think that tornado convective mode stuff that goes back to 2009. We've got a couple of the same characters, mainly myself and Brian Smith at SPC, that have been working on this every cool season since 2009. And so we've most recently been looking at matching some of the radar signatures with the detailed damage surveys, the highest damage indicators from the given whatever the highest degree of damage we can get. And we're trying, hopefully we can talk somebody into trying to build whatever the most accurate tornado damage model in real time that you can derive from this information. Basically, what can the 88D network tell you about what we think is happening now if you're sampling a storm pretty well? And hopefully that can feed back into some more consistent tornado warning performance and follow-up statements. Basically, anyone who's saying anything about what they think is happening in real time, other than they're looking out their window or a live feed, we're hoping to be able to help with that. Even though that we don't do the warnings from SPC, we see all of them, so it's pretty obviously something that we think would help because we see all the storms.
Is distance from the radar and height of the beam a variable in that process?
Yes. Yeah, we keep up with how, the width of the circulations from the peak inbound and outbound velocities, how distance from the radar or the height above the radar level, all that sort of thing. And basically how is it sampled, and, the quick summary, which is, I know it's going to be shocking, you guys looking at this, tighter circulation sampled down low have higher probabilities of higher damage ratings. I know it's stunning, but we can put numbers to it.
Well, that
Your show title.
That work is incredibly important too. When you take it in context with the fact that we seem to be going longer periods of time between significant events, and so it's not uncommon for the lay forecaster to perhaps get a little rusty. And so that kind of critical information about, hey, we've been here before, it may have been 5-7 years ago, that can be really important to decision-making and warning when something comes up quick, but it hasn't come up quick in many years in a particular location. So that's where SPC really shines, is because you've got this massive amount of information across the nation that can be applied just about anywhere. And just about anywhere has a relatively low return frequency on events. So that's really important information to have.
Yeah.
Well,
no, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead, Rich. Finish up, and then I have a question for you after.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, the advantage, as I see it working from SPC, is that because the only time it's slow for us is when the entire lower 48 is slow. But we still see all the events. So any event that happens in a local media market or at a local National Weather Service forecast office county warning area doesn't matter. My chance of working is just as good as anybody else who's there. And I can say the same thing for every other market in the country. So even in the slow years, we see a lot of severe storms. And so we can build these really big samples and hopefully keep everything in perspective. As Greg mentioned, it's been slow the last few years, but we can sort of still remind people, here's what the absolute range of possibilities look like. And, you let your guard down now, if you're just going to linearly extrapolate that it's going to be slow for the next 40 years, I mean, you could shut us down perhaps. But
don't give them any ideas, Rich.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they probably will tomorrow, but
yeah, it's coming.
Anyway, it makes for it's something that it helps us stay sharp too in the off season. And there's a lot of other work. There's a lot of people doing stuff. I don't want to make it sound like I'm certainly not the only one that's working on things. I mean, anyone who looks at our webpage, a lot of that innovation is grassroots. That's just individuals that have the skills. Greg was involved in a lot of that work in the early days, and that's why him going to DC was a big loss for us. But we're keeping the train rolling along, and we just try to make the most of the downtime when we have it.
You're lucky to have it.
Yeah.
So talk about any new products that are coming.
Well, actually, she had a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Aubrey.
Yeah, I do have a question. Can you talk, if you know a little bit about this, about some of the new articles that talk about the research going on about some of these suggestions about the tornado starting from the ground up and some of these radar signatures that are being detected before tornadoes are actually starting? Have you guys looked at any of that?
Well, now this is me speaking personally, since I've spent a lot of time pondering these things, since I'm obviously paid to forecast tornadoes, and I've been so for 25 years, 26 years now. To me, it's sort of old news. I don't know why I suppose the reason it's getting traction now is because we have a few well-observed cases with the mobile radars. But I think the base idea has been around for at least 15 years, the idea of the bottom up. And I think when you try to explain tornado genesis with a supercell mesocyclone, the easiest explanation is the bottom up. I mean, you've got a mid-level mesocyclone, the rotation strengthens and lowers, which is a function of the instability and the vertical shear, especially in the low levels. And you develop a pressure perturbation of like the vacuum cleaner effect, and that develops closer and closer to the ground, which you know, the fancy term would be the stretching of vertical vorticity. And the key is getting some vertical vorticity source near the ground, which presumably is related to the roof line downdraft, or that clear slot region that you might see with the drier storms in the vicinity of the mesocyclone, usually around the west and south side. And it's that vorticity that's then stretched upward and amplified very quickly into the tornado. So you could argue the vorticity that's feeding the tornado directly, in most cases, originates very near the ground. I mean, maybe it doesn't originate, but it's got to make it to the ground first. Before you've got to have spin at the ground before you're going to get a tornado, and it's just rapid amplification of it. So I think this notion of a bottom-up process kind of fits with the way we try to forecast it. And, you know, we could go into detail about the parameters and things, but they sort of reflect that idea.
Is it possible? Is this the first time that maybe they've captured velocity before a tornado has formed? Is that why that maybe this is getting a little traction?
I would think that it's probably related to they've got the velocity data, because if you think in the recent years, the best we can do with the standard Weather Service radar network is what we're down to maybe 90 seconds is the most rapid sampling, but that's only been in the last 2 or 3 years. These, if you put the mobile radars where they're sampling every 5 or 10 seconds, you just have to get on the right storms. And I think once you, and they've got a relatively small sample. I think they were only talking about 5 storms that they looked at, but where they have that real rapid sampling down low. And I think you just see it. And I've storm chased since 1985. And to me, this was, I won't say it's a shoulder shrug. I just think it's more confirming evidence of what my eyeballs were already telling me is likely going on. I couldn't, piece together all the theoretical underpinnings necessarily, but that's what it looks like was happening to me when I've been out in the field and able to see these on days off.
Gotcha.
So Rich, new products coming up?
We're always scheming. I think there's been a lot of talk of short-term outlooks over the last few years, and I think we've attempted to say, hey, we're about to do this, and then shutdowns or whatever. We lose people that are critical in the process, and we had some serious staffing shortages until just this past year. We're okay now, but I think the idea is we're sort of going to try to settle on testing some more rapid updates, perhaps, to the day one outlooks. What you would have seen in the past is an amendment, which is very rare. I mean, even, there's times where you guys can look at that and say, okay, this outlook seems to be going off in the weeds. And why isn't SPC doing anything about it? It's a real cumbersome process, but I think we're working out some details to speed that up and try to more fluidly reflect what the weather's doing in the short term if our longer term outlook looks like it's not very reflective of those threats. And maybe try to do it more frequently. It's just a matter of, can we pull it off? I think we've got support through the staff, and I think we've worked out most of the technical kinks to be able to do it right now.
I'm going to flip it over and ask on the other side of it, Rich. So this is a little shop talk for the rest of you, because
we love shop talk.
Yeah, I'm interested in the concept of increasing confidence at longer range. So I know SPC does not issue high risks at day 3 because we right, exactly. So that's what I'm asking about. Are you seeing the possibility that we could do that at some point, given improvements in guidance and our understandings?
Well, I'll give an example. It's not as dramatic as a day 3 high risk, but if you think what we did here on day 4, which is a direct reflection of the quality of the guidance, this was for Florence, I believe, in North Carolina. Now, I doubt most anyone was paying attention to the hurricane, but we did put a day 4 severe weather outlook area for the tornado threat in eastern North Carolina, so it's my understanding that we've never done that before. And it was simply a function of, if you look at the NHC forecast errors, I mean, we don't just throw their forecast out, the sister national center. We pay close attention because we know they're, these are the tropical cyclone experts. They're doing a job that's analogous to what I'm doing with the tornado forecast. So we're going to give them very heavy weighting. And the idea was they had, what, a 2-mile error or something on a 96-hour forecast. We thought, this looks like it's more predictable than we would normally see in terms of we're starting with an intense storm and we can already see it now. And it was more of an extrapolation exercise. So, but as you know, back when you worked with SPC or go back 15, 20 years, we'd have never even thought about doing anything on day 3 or 4. I mean, we didn't even have a day 4 outlook for a long time. And so as the guidance improves and some of the statistical underpinnings get a little better calibrated, I think the idea is that you will probably see creepage. I mean, it'll probably look slower than you might want, and all the gears that are turning in the background.
Well, so here's the hypothetical that's actually based on reality. We kind of followed suit with the excessive rainfall outlooks that high risk is not issued at day 3 until Harvey, and we got an exception to the rule in order to do that. And then we did it another time with Florence this year, which actually turned out to be perhaps a better forecast as far as the day 3 high risk. So we're working toward this concept of having confidence. Now, the interesting thing is we have a sample size of 2. They're both tropical cyclones. But I could see the same thing occurring at some point in time where SPC has really high confidence in a significant outbreak and wants to message that and wants to pull the trigger on a high risk on day 3. And that may not be too far off. I mean, it all depends. But
I know, Greg, back even when you worked in Norman, you recall the discussions about adding the individual hazard probabilities to day 2. Yeah. I think we are right on the cusp of that now. I believe the paperwork's going through in the background that we are going to try. If I understand right, we're trying to do it this next year, fiscal year. We're going to try to add like the tornado, wind, and hail probabilities to both of the day 2 outlooks. So that's just another step. If you push the individual hazards and you'll have a specific tornado, wind, and hail forecast out potentially to 60 hours, then the next logical step is to start to push the boundaries of what we call the medium range. Maybe there's day 3 looks and day 4 might start to look like the current day 3s. It's just a matter of getting all this through. But I think this is going to happen in 2019 is the goal.
Rich, let me ask you then, playing a little devil's advocate, when you, and Greg too, but when you look at the science, and the science is to a point where you're comfortable saying high risk on day 3 or whatever it may be, what weight is given to another term that Greg used, reality, where especially in some markets, you're going to get TV people or other people going, oh my gosh, is it just going to fan the flames of the extended range hype, if that makes sense as a term? Well, what weight do you give that is the real question.
Well, I would say, first of all, if you look at like the day 2 high risk, since that's where this discussion started, we've issued 2 of them. I was on both times they were issued and I approved. I was working the lead desk. I didn't specifically put the forecast out, but I worked closely with the forecaster that ultimately sent it. We've done it 2 times over 15 years where we've been able to do it. And some of that is just inertia. There's a couple of events we could have done. But I think the hard part on the severe side is going to be getting the confidence in the guidance and the tools that we're using, because one of the big problems we have is everything changes so quickly. We know that the vast majority of events are false alarms. They are not major tornado outbreaks, the vast majority of events. And I think we're pretty good at picking them out. But when you get this more and more detailed guidance, you can look at all the convection allowing guidance and it's gradually pushing farther out in time. But that also adds a lot of uncertainty. I mean, because you have a lot of different possibilities come out of that. And I don't know that we don't have an easy time getting comfortable with these tools and building a big sample, so that we have confidence in our understanding of the characteristics of how these systems behave. And then it changes again. And so it's the nature of the beast, but with everything, it's a moving target, and we're playing with different tools. Think of a sport, we've got a bat one day, and then you got a glove. Now it's a football, it's a soccer ball, whatever. And you're not going to be as comfortable using all of these tools equally in all scenarios. So I think that, and then the experience of the forecasters changes. People retire, they don't work indefinitely, and then you get a new crop, and then now they don't have the experience of the previous bunch. And then imagine if someone starts now or 3-4 years ago, their perception of severe storm forecasting is a lot different than if they had started 10 years ago and they were at this point in their career. They would have been sitting right in the middle of all these big outbreaks. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I would think that what you could expect from us is going to be very gradual and hopefully limited to just the cases where we have high confidence and we don't let our fear of, like, we've never done it before, be the one thing that stops us. Because I think that's the one thing that shouldn't stop us. But if everything else says, hey, we think this is going to happen to the best of our physical understanding, then I think we'll try to do it. But it's going to be very rare that we do anything.
Let me reframe the question a little bit, because I said high risk day 3, and let me back it down a little bit, because one of my interests is, for lack of a better term, the social aspects of this, and the hype thing, and how a given station in a given market will start to hype things, and then you get into this earlier and earlier, and then you get into this kind of, well, how wearying is that on people? So I guess my question then reframed is, when you start to push the envelope or the edge out further, are you just doing the science, or are you going, how is this going to be received? And is there some consideration of, is this going to feed the hype train earlier? And I'm causing trouble a little bit asking, but I think it's a valid question.
No, it's a very valid question. I think that what at SPC we would deal with most in the background wouldn't be so much with the media, because we don't have direct contact with most of you folks in a real-time sense. But we do with the local forecast offices that serve your viewing areas and that thing. So it's just another step further behind the scenes in the hype process. There definitely is a push in certain parts of the country to what the Weather Service calls their decision support services, and they want to message certain threats. And if they decide that, day 7, 8, 9, that they want to start talking about the severe weather threat, which most of the time is foolish given the uncertainty involved, but if they want to do that, they can put pressure on the SPC forecasters. Hey, because there's also a concurrent push to be consistent across the National Weather Service product suite. So we don't want, because there was an example way in the back, this was before Greg, way before he was at WPC, before they even had that name, where we had a severe weather outlook that had a north-south axis, and there was a preset forecast that was east-west. The way it looked like there was no way people could have been making the same forecast. So that just at the national level, they want to see things that look like people talk to each other, and then it makes sense. So we have some pressure to do that, but I think thus far SPC's been pretty immune to that, because I think first and foremost we'll stick with the science, because we put out the forecast every day. And if we try too hard to guess what's going to happen and jump into the arms race and be the first to claim that we said something, we just have to accept that there's no way in this day and age that SPC, even though you could nominally say we're some of the experts, but we're never going to be the first to say it. So we're just going to try to stick with credible forecasts as best we can, so that, when we say high risk, when we say moderate risk, or even enhanced, those sort of things, that people remember, hey, something important happened. And they're not just making up stuff just to say they were the first ones to, sound the warning alarm. We just accept that we won't be, and inherently, it's typical of government, but I think we're conservative in a good way, because we're trying not to get caught up in that as best we can.
I would agree, Kevin. I think that science is going to drive these changes. As far as I'm concerned, in fact, I'm involved in some of this with respect to coming up with the day 3 high risk for excessive rainfall outlook. I want to see the science drive these decisions, not the fact that we need to be out there first. These are really challenging scientific problems, And the only way to address them is through an evaluation of what we know, how well the guidance does. QPF and heavy rain are perhaps a little more approachable in the medium range, but their impacts, I would argue, could be just as unpredictable as that of severe weather. And that's why that's why I wanted to ask the question of Rich to get his insight on that, because it is a challenging question and about how confident you can be with respect to high-end extreme events beyond, say, 72 hours, 96 hours. We can see some of the pieces coming together for these events, but you get too confident too fast, you run a big risk of being wrong more often than right.
And definitely, I think that one of the fears that we have, at least at SPC, is that these outlooks get a lot of attention, whether we like it or not. We're much more visible than we used to be. You know, my career started, we were behind the scenes, and only the people that are like here on the show tonight, plus about 10 or 15 others, knew we existed. And now, who knows how many people can call up this stuff just directly, and whether they understand it or not. So we try to keep our credibility is first and foremost our concern, and predictability. If it's just not there, we just have to sit back and say we're not going to do it. And I think that, pulling the trigger on these high-end outlooks, if with the convective rainfall, and it has to hit a certain basin, you have to have the movement of the convection in a particular direction, timing, that sort of thing. All that, I mean, if you think about a tornado outbreak, what makes the outbreak is usually one or two tornadoes. It's the public perception of what happens, and do we have the misfortune of one big tornado encounters a population center, or do we have just chaser videos from western Kansas or something? They may be significant tornadoes, but they don't hit anything. So there's not much societal impact other than a couple of servers that are streaming this might crash because too many people are watching. But there's that sort of stuff. So, I think that we're sort of trying to get to, and that's why we stick with probabilistic forecasts. And Greg can probably say the same thing, that they're working on some FEMA level, sort of impact models that take what has happened in the past when we put out certain types of outlooks and that have verified in particular ways, the good forecasts and some of the not so good, and overlay it with population distributions and that sort of thing, and then run tens of thousands of simulations to say, what are the range of possibilities? And, what are the odds that a single long track tornado might hit somewhere, like a Joplin type day or whatever? And, it's always going to be low probability, but the question is, can we get that information out there to where people say, hey, it may be low chance, but there's a chance, and without fanning the flames and sending everyone into panic, which usually doesn't help.
Is there any, I'm sorry, go ahead, James.
No, you finish, and I'm going to ask a question, and then I got to go do television. Go, Kevin.
Okay, this is related. The SPC Outlook Daily Outlook naming convention had come under some fire, and I'm setting aside the very popular T-shirt from Helicity Designs, which I've seen everywhere. But is there any work done on any work going on about, for lack of a better term, fixing that? I've felt like I've seen a lot of confusion on the words that were picked.
Well, we knew that there were going to be problems. Now, ironically enough, this is going back at least 15 years. The projection from some of the previous staff at the Storm Prediction Center was the problem was going to center on the term marginal for the lower end outlook. That's actually seems to have been well received. So ironically enough, what a lot of people worried about, they weren't worried about something in the middle. Does enhanced, which I'm assuming that's what you're getting at, is the whole slight enhanced moderate transition in the middle of the scheme, which people take the words literally. I think part of the reason that we don't worry about it quite as much as the outside might is because we provide probabilities with it. So regardless of what we call it, we put bigger numbers with it, and we put scarier colors with those bigger numbers. And the hope is that one of the three ways of presenting it will eventually sink in. And if nothing else, you're not going to see an enhanced outside a slight risk. Yeah. It's got to be within. So at some point it becomes apparent. It's like a topographic map. Well, this is the middle. It's got to be it's not a bowl. It's actually the peak. And worse stuff happens when they say this and they describe it as worse. So we're just hoping that people on average, maybe it's probably not a good idea to tell the average person who doesn't look at these forecasts that there's a slight risk because they have no context. Context is critical with the terminology. I mean, we could call it whatever we want. It could be a purple outlook or whatever. And as long as we're consistent in with what it means, that's where I think our approach is just be consistent with how we describe it, and we physically define these things. We don't just change. And if we do make a change, it goes through a lot of vetting in the background, and we try to make everybody aware. So I guess my short answer is I'm not aware that there are any easy solutions to that without breaking the whole categorical outlook scheme, which I think that if we were just trash the whole thing, that would cause as many problems as anything. And so it's just one of those, I'm just glad we have 2 or 3 different ways. Well, and we also have the numerical stuff that goes with it, where it's like a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And which we're hoping that somebody, at least most people, can understand at least one of those presentations. And
hey, let me ask this before I have to go to television. This is for Rich and Greg. And Rich, you touched on this. I don't think you guys understand this, but you guys are rock stars in the weather enterprise. and you're right. You know, it used to be, you know, when I was getting in this business, it was Sells in Kansas City. And nobody knew these guys. They provided guidance to the local offices. But now I looked at the Facebook pages. The SPC has 290,000 likes. And Greg, WPC has 316,000 likes.
Competition.
Hey, that's not right.
So, and again, you guys are going directly to the public, and they're starting to know your names. All of your products are in all these, you know, they go in the graphic systems. How have you adjusted to that from being an important part of the weather service that really people don't know about now to being very public, and people know your name, Rich and Greg? You guys are big deals. You get the haters too, and I see it. I look on your Facebook page, and you get the same haters we do. So we're all in the same boat now. How has that adjustment been made? And having said that, I will be listening to the answer when I'll be driving around Colorado.
Before he answers, can you explain to me what a like is? I don't understand that.
All right. Yes. Show title. All right.
Okay. Sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, I was going to pass this one to Greg first while I ponder my response.
Well, I don't think our responses are going to be all that different. You know, for me, and you can see it in Rich too. It's a passion for what we do. It's a passion for trying to understand every day you walk in the door what the heck the atmosphere is up to today. And I mean that on a really deep level. Like, you know, there's need to want to understand how things work. And you know that you're not going to know it all. That's the other thing. You're very humbled by this over time. So the haters, they can hate. I mean, that's the least of my worries. I worry about not being able to understand why a certain thunderstorm, you know, stood still and dumped 6 inches of rain on a vulnerable town, and I had no clue about it. And so I think we're just passionate about what we do, and every day poses these challenges about trying to better understand nature and predict where it's going next.
Yeah, I essentially ditto. I mean, just like everyone who's on the show right now, everybody here is passionate about the weather, some aspect of it, and usually much more than just one. And like Greg said, we just want to do the best we can. I mean, the haters, so to speak, we're way harder on ourselves than these folks are. Because we're criticizing our own products. I mean, probably the only thing that differs now from the past is I know the audience is bigger, but even back in the Kansas City days when I first started with the Severe Storms Forecast Center, there may not have been a lot of people that looked at it, but I knew a lot of the people that saw the outlook. So if I put out a bad outlook, I know people were going to be aware of it. And it was, you know, because my name, for my whole career, my name has been sitting at the bottom of it. So I think it just forces me to take it seriously. I mean, that I'm doing something that at least somebody thinks matters, and we're trying to do it the best we can and get gradually better over time. And, you know, as far as the likes and all the notoriety, there's really not that much. I mean, I live here in central Oklahoma, and I guarantee you I can walk to my next door neighbors. They don't have any earthly idea what I do. I can tell them, and they still don't know. So, you know, the rock star thing is, I'll give an example. My brother showed up to ChaserCon. He lives up in the Denver area. This was several years back. And people just there were a handful of people that wanted to talk to me after a presentation. And he was just cracking up that people would wait in line to talk to his brother. And so he's kind of a little more outgoing than I am. He gets in the line and starts talking, you know, giving people some grief, or like, oh yeah, have you ever talked to him? Oh yeah, I've talked to him before. And just hamming it up in there. And it just sort of, I mean, all I can do is just laugh. I mean, this whole rock star thing. I mean, you guys on the media, you literally can have hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million plus people who know you. I can go anywhere, even in Norman, and 99.99% of the people, and that's where I would be the quote most famous, and nobody knows who I am. I've had it happen like one time in the last like 3 years. Somebody saw me at the grocery store and said, "Hey, you're Rich Thompson, aren't you?" And you know, I was more surprised than anything, like looking around, you know, yeah. But I mean, like one time. So if it's not some sort of chaser or weather person gathering, I'm just as unknown as everybody else.
The weather Twitter gathering at the AMS meeting last January. My son lives in Austin, and Troy knows that. And so I had my son come down. We went out to dinner, and then I said, "Hey, there's this gathering of weather folks having a after hours party. You want to go?" And my son went with me, and he couldn't believe how people were just like, "Hey, that's Greg Carbon. We're gonna get our picture." He's texting his brother. He's like, "Dad's a pretty big deal in weather." And it was just it was an eye-opening experience for my son.
Yeah, well, Greg, I had another version of this. Both of my sons went through OU, and they're not meteorology majors, but they took one of the intro meteorology classes. I don't know if they felt pressure. I didn't make them do it, but they did not reveal who they were last name until the last day of the semester. Both of them. They said they didn't want to bias anything, but then the very last day, they said, "Oh yeah, that Thompson," and the TA knew. It's like, "Oh, okay, I know who that is." That's about as far as the whole rock stardom thing.
Right. I'm a rock star in my family.
To about 8 people.
You're all rock stars in the WeatherBrains community. I can promise you that. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your holiday schedules and doing this tonight. Rich, thank you for getting everything together to be here. And Greg, it's always an honor to have you with us. So
thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And it was good to hear from you, Greg. You want to come back to Norman anytime? We're going to have some more openings.
Say hi to the crew back there.
Well, it's probably that time of the week where we'll do picks of the week, and I know Rich and Greg may not have had time to think about that, so I'll start with Dr. John. Dr. John, you got a pick of the week for us?
Oh, absolutely, Bill. But let me first say thanks to Greg and Rich. It's fun to geek out like this. And in my own family, they could care less. In fact, when we were out in public and I get recognized, they just roll their eyes and they say, "Oh, here we go again." So I understand exactly what you're saying. My pick this evening is having to do with ENSO, since it's the #1 driver of natural climatic variability. And we're looking at how is ENSO going to be through the winter and into the spring. My pick is the website for the International Research Institute, and take a look at the latest outlooks for ENSO.
Outstanding, Dr. John. We're so glad to have you back on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Bill.
Late in Harrisburg. So will you break your annual record for rainfall, or have you already done it?
Already did it, Bill.
Oh,
already did
gravy from now on.
Oh, yeah.
It was quite a year in Pennsylvania. You had a couple of EF2s, Wilkes-Barre back in June.
That wasn't too far away from me. That was an extraordinary storm.
Wow. Well, thank you for being here tonight, and Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Same to you, Bill.
Kevin, we're lucky to have you all the way to the end. This is awesome.
I know. It's fun to be off of work. I will back up a week since I put one in last week, but I didn't mention it. We had a winter weather event here not long ago, a mixed precipitation event, and I came across a really nice but simple blog post from RadarScope, which I thought would be helpful. So I think that's on last week's, or must be last week's show. Anyway, it's using radar scope and identifying between rain, sleet, and snow, and it talks very well, but simply about differential reflectivity and correlation coefficient in those winter weather events. We think of those, in severe weather events. So I thought that was useful. And then this week is just a National Geographic article titled "How a Weird Fire Vortex Sparked a Meteorological Mystery."
Yeah, you mentioned something about that earlier, Greg, in the pre-show, didn't you?
There's a paper out on the fire vortex or fire tornado that occurred in California. Paradise Fire.
Yeah, it's a great 3D simulation in that paper.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Troy, I know we want to get you out of here by 10 o'clock. We're almost going to make it.
Okay, I probably won't turn into a pumpkin or anything here in the next couple of minutes. I actually found something that I kind of wanted to bring up for Greg and for Rich. Dr. James Elsner down at Florida State gave a recent presentation at AGU, and part of that had to do with kind of what he called U.S. tornado power increasing since about the mid-1990s. And it's actually in Dr. Jeff Masters' blog here in the last week and a half, I guess, or so. And I don't know if Rich or whether you saw that, but I found it to be an interesting article and thought I'd just throw it out there.
Outstanding.
I haven't seen it. I'll have to go look at that.
Okay.
I'll look now.
Yeah.
You can do that.
And who on here's got good contacts with Jeff Masters? Anybody on the show?
Well, I know Jeff, actually.
Yeah, see if you can get him on the show. You're in charge of that, Dr. John.
Actually, Bill, I've tried.
Oh yeah, I think
he's turned me down.
Yeah, I don't think. And you're in charge of Missoula, Greg. So get on that.
Try to get Tom on from Northern Vermont. Can I get my pick in?
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming
Right.
here next for that. So hit it.
So I was just looking at it. It's usually pretty boring, but tonight's an interesting case. If you Google extreme precipitation monitor, you'll get the WPC page that depicts the average recurrence interval based on the forecast rainfall. So for tonight, there's actually a little green showing up around the New York City metro area for the next 24 hours. The rainfall there has an average recurrence interval of probably a year or two. You might see rainfall amounts of this magnitude over the next 24 hours, maybe once every other year. And so there you
go. Give that website again, Greg.
It's just Google extreme precipitation monitor, and you'll get the page.
You're always so.
This is great, Greg. Comes up as EPM. Oh, this is great.
Wow.
Outstanding. So thank you for being here tonight. We'll
thank
let you have the honor of picking the show title tonight. Greg. I think Kevin has 2 nominations in. Number 1, is it too late to cancel? That's probably
I like that one, Rich. Yeah.
I think one of mine made the list. What is the Weather Channel name? That's a good one. And Rich's we knew there were going to be problems. How about that one?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And Kevin comes in with can you explain to me what a like is? How about that?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Greg, you get to pick. Which one's it going to be?
What was the we knew there were going to be problems?
Yeah, Rich's was we knew there were going to be problems. Talking about
I like Rich's.
So do I.
That explains my appearances on the show too.
So, Rich, what's your pick of the week?
I got nothing. You guys, I've been chasing a 2-year-old around all day, and I'm getting a little old to do this. So this was my break for the whole day.
Well, we're glad we could be your break, and we'll give you the honorary foghorn.
Yeah, I get a lot of that too.
Yeah, but I like
Bill,
yes.
I want to say something before we get out of here for these two guys, for both Rich and Greg. Just as far as the outreach is concerned, I've had the chance to know Greg for a number of years now. I don't know that I've ever shaken Rich's hand, but I've been up at SPC a couple of times, and we've kind of at social media stuff occasionally in touch. But the outreach, Greg has always been so great for the media people and everything, and always willing to be there and answer any questions. And I'm going to tell you, I think, and Rich, if I'm off a year, I apologize. But last spring, I don't know how many people got the chance to watch Rich in the series on severe weather forecasting on the web. Rich, was it last year?
Oh, the original one was the spring of 2015. We've re-released a lot of it into shorter videos. That's part of a sort of other class that I'll be doing, at least the co-instructor again this coming spring.
Well, I got to tell you, man, that I sat here mesmerized, watched that week by week when you did that and the outreach on that. And again, on Greg's part and both of your part, it's tip of the hat for me anyway. It's amazing thing, good outreach, and thank you for what you do.
Well, thanks a lot, Troy. I appreciate that very much.
Rich said you said re-released. Where do people find that?
Well, if you look on the SPC webpage, I think it's under. It might still be under the new stuff. We don't update that as often as you might think, but I believe it might actually be under the outreach. But it should be on the new banner at the top. There'll be severe weather videos because it's essentially just a bunch of 15 to 20-minute segments of a lot of the same stuff that was in the workshop that the student chapter of the AMLs helped put on. And they were the ones that came up with our ability to stream it back in 2015. I mean, that was pretty fun to do. That was something I'd wanted to do for about 10 years. And finally, the confluence of events was such that, I didn't even care if nobody showed up by the end of it. I was just having fun.
Well, no, Rich, I could tell you were having a good time. It was really well received, and you could tell you were having a good time.
Well, again, thanks for the comments, and I'm just glad to know at least I can confirm 2 or 3 people watched it.
Oh, I did too.
You're up to 4 now, Rich. That's
yep.
Good. Woo! Well, my picks or shows coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll be back together again on Wednesday, January 2nd. We're going to have a great show on the weather of the Pacific Northwest. Wolf Reed will join us. Morgan Palmer will join us. And hopefully Dr. Cliff Mass will join us too. So that should be a really great show, which is a listener suggestion that we had recently. So always send in those listener suggestions. And when you include emails, I love you even more. I appreciate that because these great shows happen because of our great listeners. We're going to have an amateur radio hour on the 7th. Where you could arguably say that every time we do this, it's amateur radio hour, but but that'll be ham radio hour, I guess, will be for January the 7th. On the 14th, great show about hazard simplification. That's going to be fun. And fast forwarding out to February the 11th, a fantastic show, Women in Meteorology, suggested by Tina Stahl. Aubrey's putting it together, and Ginger Z is going to join us. So heads up, that one's going to be an early show. And as Dr. John says, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody. Anyone traveling very far for the holiday?
Staying local.
Me too, just to my refrigerator.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the same here.
Yeah, vacation for us too. Like the hat, Troy, that looks good.
Thank you.
Like your hat too, Rich, those Astros. How are they going to be this year?
You know what? I thought about wearing a Sooners hat, but given what's liable to happen to them here just over a week.
But you know what's so funny? You got 2 million people in Oklahoma thinking that's going to happen. You got 2 million people in Alabama thinking y'all are going to run us over. So we need a little bet. We need a little bet, Rich. You know, maybe.
I just have to figure out what I'm willing to lose, and then you're on.
All right, steak dinner. We need something. So Dr. John's up to 54 degrees in Harrisburg. So.
Lancaster, Bill. Lancaster.
Oh, Lancaster. I should know that. I've been an elbow there in Lancaster. Yeah, you have. So, but anyway, well, WeatherBrains is the weekly show that's all about weather. We normally do it on Monday nights, but not anytime soon. At least while James is on vacation. But we will be back on Wednesday, January 2nd. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you. And until we get together again, for the whole WeatherBrains crew, I'm Bill Murray saying have a great week and keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. So you're decked, and you didn't even get to discuss your sign in the back there. I think you need to light it up for us, Greg. So zoom that in for us. Can you? This is priceless. Well, somebody was supposed to ask about it. So what does it say, Greg? Describe it to us.
Hold a little higher.
The weekend forecast is alcohol low standards and poor disposal.
I have to get one of those. That is great.
100% confidence in that forecast. No uncertainty. And it lights up too. Oh, we need to merchandise that. Baby. Y'all have a great holiday. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Same to you.
Bye.
see if they're still on the air here. They might be. Ooh, they're done. Look at this. 6 people are still watching. That's amazing to me. All right, so now we're simulcasting. This is WeatherBrains and Song of the Night, where weather and society intersect. But listen, thank you from the WeatherBrains side. Thank you guys for watching and listening through the year. It's our year ender, last show for 2018. Great having Greg Carbon and Rich Thompson on. Greg from WPC, Rich from SPC. And if you are just joining us later, if you're watching on Song of the Night, it's going to be a great listen. Greg does his meteorological memories, the top 10 events of 2018. And I can't wait to hear the show as I'm driving, and I'll be off. This will be released to the podcast world on Christmas Day, but it'll, of course, be up on YouTube. It's on YouTube right now. So thank you guys for watching on the WeatherBrains side. We'll see y'all in 2019. Y'all have a great week. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.